George III, the Mad King on the mortuary table. Imagine Windsor Castle in January 1820. Outside, the frost clings to the lawns. Inside, the palace is thick with silence, broken only by the shuffling of attendants and the endless scratching of physicians' quills. Britain has been waiting for this moment for months, if not years. King George III, once hale and hearty, once the monarch who lost America but kept the throne, is finally, undeniably, dying. He is 81. He has been blind for years, deaf for nearly as long. He has been insane, out of touch with reality, for over a decade. The newspapers print little more than His Majesty continues to sink. The Prince Regent, soon to be George IV, is king in all but name, while his father fades in a darkened room at Windsor, watched over like a prisoner. And then, on 29th of January 1820, George III dies. The doctors of the day did what royal doctors always did. They opened the body. They described a big heart, clogged arteries, water in the lungs. And then they stopped. They never touched the skull. They never examined the brain. The one organ the world wanted answers from, they left alone. But today, we're going to do what they didn't. We're going to drag George III onto a modern mortuary table, crack open the chest, slice through the abdomen, and yes, finally saw into that skull. We're going to give him the autopsy he should have had. Welcome to George III, The Last Days. George's decline was not sudden. It was a slow, humiliating collapse. In his younger years, he had been robust, energetic, and devoutly moral. He prided himself on his health and his abstinence. But by the turn of the 19th century, the cracks were obvious. He suffered periodic bouts of what was called madness, wild raving fits, uncontrolled speech, paranoia, and violence. At times he foamed at the mouth, screamed through the night, or babbled without pause for hours. By 1810, after a particularly severe attack, it was clear he would never recover. Parliament passed the Regency Act, and his son took over government. George III was packed off to Windsor, where for the last decade of his life he wandered, blind, deaf, and delusional, cared for by attendants who kept him locked away from public view. His body wasted and bloated in turn. He developed pneumonia, coughed and spluttered until his lungs filled with fluid, and in January 1820 his enormous frame finally gave up. The polite verdict? Pneumonia, leading to heart failure. The real story? Something far darker and far more complicated. The external examination. Laid out on the mortuary slab, George's body is a sight. He is old, yes, but more than that, he is bloated. The kind of swelling that comes from years of heart failure and kidney disease. His legs are swollen with fluid, the skin stretched and mottled, a sign of chronic edema. His abdomen protrudes, fat clinging stubbornly even after weeks of illness. His eyes are pale clouds of cataract, rendering him blind even before death claimed him. His teeth are brown stumps, the result of decades of sugar and poor dentistry. This is not the body of a man who aged gracefully. This is a body that had been breaking down for years. Opening the chest. The first cut reveals the truth. His chest is opened, ribs pulled apart, and the heart stares back. Massive, heavy, thick-walled. It is far larger than it should be, the classic mark of a man whose heart has been straining against high blood pressure for years. The arteries feeding it are hard, yellow and narrow. Atherosclerosis, fatty plaques lining the vessels, restricting blood flow until every beat was a battle. No wonder he had chest pain. No wonder he collapsed into heart failure. The lungs are sodden, heavy with fluid. Pneumonia was the final straw, yes, but it was the heart that set him up to drown in his own chest. Each breath in his last days was not just laboured, it was suffocating. Into the abdomen. The knife traces down, the abdomen is opened. Fat spills out immediately, thick, yellow, clinging to every organ. George was not as grotesquely obese as his grandson George IV would later be, but he was far from lean. The liver is enlarged, pale, greasy, a textbook case of fatty liver disease, probably worsened by medicines and sedentary living. The intestines are irritated, inflamed, years of harsh purgatives and experimental cures leaving scars on the gut. The kidneys are small, shriveled and rough to the touch. Chronic damage from high blood pressure and toxins. The urine that once alarmed courtiers with its reddish colour was not a divine punishment. It was diseased kidneys struggling to do their job. And here's the damning detail. If we clip some hair and test it in a modern lab, we'd find arsenic. High levels of it. Not the work of assassins, but of medicine. George's doctors had been dosing him with arsenic and mercury for years. Tonics, powders and hair treatments laced with poison. His madness may not have been born of disease alone, but of the very cures meant to save him. The skull that was never opened. And now at last we take the saw to the skull. This is the moment the real doctors of 1820 refused to give us. Inside, the brain tells a story written in scars, areas of pale dead tissue, mini-strokes or lacunar infarcts scattered across the grey matter. The arteries are stiff, brittle, narrow. A lifetime of high blood pressure and vascular disease has damaged the brain beyond repair. In the frontal lobes, the regions that control mood, impulse and speech, the damage is particularly marked. This was the seat of his raving fits, his pressured speech, his manic energy. There is no tumour, no rare porphyria signature. What we see is a brain battered by vascular dementia, poisoned by medicine, and collapsing under the weight of its own clogged arteries. The modern verdict. So, what would the autopsy report say if written today? Cause of death, pneumonia, leading to congestive heart failure, contributing conditions, severe coronary artery disease, hypertension, vascular dementia caused by repeated strokes, chronic kidney disease, heavy metal toxicity, arsenic, mercury, obesity. Underlying story. George III did not die of mysterious madness. He died of diseases entirely familiar to modern medicine, heart disease, dementia, stroke, worsened by the poisonous treatments of the day. The theories revisited. For centuries, people speculated. Was it porphyria, the rare blood disease that turns urine purple? That theory, popular in the 20th century, has now largely collapsed. His symptoms do not fit. His madness was cyclical, yes, but his physical signs point to stroke and dementia, not porphyria. Was it arsenic poisoning? Yes, but not deliberate. His doctors, his wigs, his powders, all contained arsenic, and it likely worsened his condition. The most convincing modern reading? A combination of bipolar disorder in earlier life, sliding into vascular dementia as his arteries hardened and his brain died by inches. The final irony. And here lies the bitter twist. His doctors did cut him open in 1820. They saw the enlarged heart, the waterlogged lungs, the hardened arteries, but they never touched the skull. The one question everyone wanted answered: what was inside the brain of the mad king? They left forever sealed. So George III remains a mystery, even as his body tells us everything we need to know. That was past people, George III, one king, one bloated heart, one poisoned body, and one brain locked away by history. He didn't die of madness. He didn't die of curses. He died of being a sick old man in the age of bad medicine, and in that, perhaps, lies the most human truth of all.